what if I just figured something out about myself on your show?
I love it.
You're such a good host.
I'm taking this to my therapy this week. Today's guest is best known for her work in the national tour of Hamilton. Please welcome to the Zoom, Ashley LaLonde. Hello.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Julia. I am so excited to chat.
Thank you for being here. How are you? How's your day?
My day's going well. I had a couple auditions. Now getting to come back home, chill out, and yeah, no, I'm feeling pretty good today. It's hot. It's hot this summer. Very humid, very thick.
Yeah, it's
So
hot here
I'm
too.
yeah. How is it in LA? Hot, but
Hot.
is there
Yeah.
a breeze at least?
Not where I am. I'm like
Oh,
sweating
yeah.
here. But is do you like summer or are you more of like a winter?
I would say I like summer because I do like all the outdoorsy things and I like the beach and I like the sitting outside on a patio. But I don't like being sweaty all the time. Like you just kind of can't escape it with New York, and then the subway platforms are almost like the pit of hell. It's like so intense down there.
Yeah.
And then you are getting inside and then you're freezing because you're a little bit wet and it's so I
Yeah.
don't like that portion. I like the vibe of summer in theory, but I would say my favorite in terms of weather plus vibes is probably spring and fall. I love both. So I would say spring and fall because I like that temperate middle ground here we get in New York. And then fall is fun because you're like leading up to the holidays and watching the leaves change. And I love Christmas, and then my birthday's in January. And then spring is fun because you're just like, finally no more cold, flowers, life is back.
Right. So where are you from?
Yeah, I'm born and raised right here in New York City in Manhattan. So I have lived here like, all of my life, apart from touring and apart from college. Born and raised Manhattanite.
What did your parents do growing up? Like what brought you to
Yeah,
the
it's
city?
funny. They're from the Midwest, and so they did not expect to end up in New York. Certainly did not expect to raise kids. They're not at all in the industry. They're both in business.
Mhm.
But my parents basically they got married right after college. They're high school sweethearts from
Oh,
Minneapolis, which is very, very sweet. Yeah, they actually just celebrated 35 years of marriage. They've been
wow.
together for 42 years, so it's super fun. That literally was on Sunday.
Oh,
But they moved here shortly after getting married, and it was like for a job and for grad school. And they were kind of like, "We'll be here for a couple of years," and a couple of years turned into a couple more, and a couple. And okay, I'm gonna have kids here, and now they've been here for over 30 years. My brother and I were both born here, and yeah, they still live here, and now they're lifers. I can't
wow.
imagine that they would leave New York permanently at this point. Who knows? But yeah, so I've lived here. I love it so much. I'm not a full New Yorker nowhere person, but I do think that there's just a special thing to the energy of New York City that you can't find anywhere else.
Hmm.
Obviously, for Broadway, this is the place to be. But I love the culture of New York. There's like a hustle to it, but also the intense like diversity of New York City, which is in other places where entertainment is a huge industry, like LA,
Hmm.
a lot of the people in the LA area are connected to entertainment, Hollywood, TV, streaming, music. And what I love about New York is that, of course, there's the industry side, but there's also just like literally every other career path.
Hmm.
And I think that makes New York really beautiful. I love the racial and ethnic diversity, the cultural diversity, the like age demographic, the socioeconomic diversity, that there's just every kind of person basically, apart from maybe a farmer. There's almost every kind of person in New York City, and I think there's something really special to the energy here. So I love it. And I've lived here many, many years with breaks in between, but yeah.
Yeah, my parents are from New York, so we go every year to
Oh,
see family. And I totally know what I mean, I'm like an LA person, but I totally know what you mean about like the hustle and the diversity. It's so beautiful. Um, is your brother older?
yeah, my brother is a few years older, so he is 29.
Oh, amazing. How did you get into performing if your parents were in business?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it feels kind of like a God thing and a natural thing for me of as a kid, my mom jokes that I came out of the womb singing. She's like, you were just always singing. Like I would sing what I was doing. My favorite one that my mom always brings up still to this day is I would be like, I'm tying my shoes, and I would like literally sing just everything.
Wow.
The singing was like one of my first languages in a sense. And I grew up singing in church as well. And so I just always loved singing. And I think what I love about singing is that it kind of unlocks something both for the singer, but also for the listeners, something even beyond words that's accessed through music, but the combination of voice, obviously text, and then the music. I love that combination. So I think singing was my initial pathway in because I just always loved singing. And I grew up actually a competitive gymnast. So really before I even got into dancing, before I got into theater, I was a competitive gymnast for 10 years, like
Wow.
competed, won whatever big places in New York State as a little kid, which is so
What level
funny to
did you get
think
up
back.
to?
So I stopped at level 6 to then pursue theater. Because and so I did continue just going to the gym and flipping and just doing gymnastics because I loved it. But it was kind of like that 6, 7 point of level, and I don't know if you're familiar of like the
A little
sounds like
bit.
you
A
are.
little.
Yeah, it gets so intense that it's kind of like, all right, are we gonna like try and do gymnastics in college? Are we shooting for the national team, Olympics? All of these pieces. It's funny, I'm not a tall person. I'm only 5'4", but I'm really tall for a gymnast.
Mm.
My mom actually was a gymnast in college. She's under 5 foot. She's like 4'11" on a good day. And so she's like perfect gymnastic size. And for me, as like an average to shorter human, I'm really tall for gymnastics.
Mm.
So all this to say, I had this kind of point around the end of middle school, early high school, of like deciding, okay, where am I going to shift my energy? I had been doing gymnastics and I did start doing theater. I started doing theater in a more quote unquote serious way. I mean, like, serious theater that you're doing as a non-professional actor middle schooler. But I started getting more engaged and committed to theater or really discovering it and falling in love with it in middle school. So middle school is kind of this turning point. I also played volleyball, I ran track. I was kind of doing all of these different things. Obviously gymnastics, I was dancing some, and it was like, okay, where am I focusing my energy? I also was a huge nerd. Like I love academics. I love learning. And so I was also really focused on school. And I ended up shifting most of my energy into theater come high school. And I was really grateful growing up in New York. There were a lot of awesome theater programs that I got to do. Both my school had awesome programs because I went to a prep school here in New York, and we had actually like a few other kids who were working actors. So people who you may even know now, even though it wasn't an art school, it just so
Wow.
happened that while I was there, we had several young musicians and young actors who were already working professionally, which was not the case for me. I did actually sign with my agents in high school, so I've been with innovative artists for 10 years, which has been
Wow.
awesome. I love them, and it's been like fun to kind of grow up and grow into
Yeah.
everything. But I wasn't a Broadway kid in the sense of like working on Broadway, nor was I like the theater obsessed kid. I was like a kid who
Really?
loved singing and dancing. I did theater, but I was not like Newsies and Rent and all these things that were huge in my generation. It was kind of like, oh, that's cool, but I also like I'm gonna go to volleyball practice and like so I had this love for it, but I also had these other loves. So it wasn't my clear pathway forward. But I did programs like Broadway Workshop and Stage Door Manor in the summer. So I was fostering that love and that skill set. And then when I signed with Innovative, it was like, oh my gosh, someone might pay me to do this. This is really, really cool. But honestly, Julia, I really thought I was going to be a doctor at that point in my life,
What?
which is so funny now because now, being in my 20s, I'm like, oh my gosh, I would not have wanted to be a doctor. They're in school for so long, and I do love learning, and I'm grateful that I have both in the artistic sense, but also other areas in my life where I'm really committed to learning and research, and
Hmm.
I can chat about that later, but I loved science. I was a science nerd. I like tutored other kids in science, like at my high school and stuff, and I just loved it so much. And I was like, well, if I love science and I love people and I want to help people, of course, be a doctor. That's the natural pathway. But honestly, by senior year of high school, I was second guessing that a bit because I took advanced physics and I was like, I don't love advanced physics. And I was like, if I choose to be a doctor and I take a pre-med route, I'm going to have to do a lot more physics, and I don't love physics. I like theoretical physics. I think that's interesting, but the applied math, advanced physics was not my thing. I mean, thank goodness it went well, but it's not something I enjoyed. So by senior year, I was kind of and simultaneously, I did have the love of theater, and I had all of these friends who were auditioning for these big MT programs. So I was feeling this tension and this push and pull of what is my life path? Oh my gosh, like what makes me excited? And also, I was really thinking about the lifestyle of being an actor. And that I think is something people don't talk about enough is when you choose to become a professional creative and there's like the freelancing life, the side hustle life, constant auditioning if you're lucky,
Yeah.
and it takes a lot of grit and a lot of like patience and a lot of like faith and trust and hard work, and all of these pieces need to come together. So the lifestyle is very, for lack of a better word, volatile. It's a really high highs, it can be really low lows.
Yeah.
If you're lucky that you even get to these points where you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm doing it. But it's also the case that like things can feel very all or nothing. And so you can have a month where you have projects like back to back, no days off, and things are going really well. And then you can have a month where you have no auditions or you don't book anything or you just are really down in the dumps on yourself. So there's this like roller coaster ride in terms of the lifestyle. Obviously, you hope that you maybe get a job that's a little bit more stable. And I was so grateful. For me, that was Hamilton, and I had the best time, and it was amazing. It was a dream come true. And so that sort of contract, you're riding the wave for a bit until you leave or you don't get renewed or whatever happens at the end, and then you're back to it. So it's kind of it's such a crazy lifestyle. And I think because I grew up in New York, because I was starting to get connected to the professional community in high school, since I signed with my agents, I thank you, Innovative, for keeping me around, because in high school, I truly was like, I want to be a doctor and I'm going to go to volleyball practice. And I remember there was a small project I booked and I made them work around my like volleyball practice schedule. I was like, guys, I'm on my volleyball team at my high school. And to be fair, I was varsity co-captain, so I took it very seriously. But I made a professional, like it was a really cool opportunity, and I was like, oh, I can't make that rehearsal time because I have volleyball practice.
Wow.
And Innovative worked it out for me. So it's funny to think back on that time, but I really was weighing these things somewhat equally in that phase of my life, where I knew that I wanted to go to college, and like that's not everyone's path, especially as artists. I mean, for anyone, period, but especially artists, because it's the case that you don't technically need a degree in this to do it, there's all sorts of backgrounds represented on Broadway, on TV, in film. There's a lot of pathways, and so there's not one pathway. Of course, there's certain pathways that are maybe more common because they train and prepare you better. But there's a lot of pathways and a lot of ways to get the training, to get the experience, a lot of different places you can be. So all this to say, come high school, I knew I wanted to take a liberal arts route because I wasn't confident. I loved Broadway, and I loved TV, and I loved movies, and I loved music, but I wasn't 100% sure that that would be my life path. And so I feel very grateful. I was encouraged to apply early to Harvard by my college counselor and a couple other people in my life who knew that I was really academic and intellectually focused, and also knew that I wanted the opportunity to explore other things and to not be too far from New York. And so I ended up getting in early to Harvard when I was 17, and that was
incredible.
Thank you. That was like mind blowing. Just even
Was it
now,
your dream school?
yes and no. It's not. I'll say it was not the school that I ever envisioned myself going to. So I was not the kid who grew up being like, I want to go to Harvard. No. So in that sense, it was not at all my dream school. I'll say that I was encouraged to visit it, I think probably a year before applying, like when you start looking at colleges. So I had visited with my mom, and that first visit, I was like, not my place. Not
Wow.
only like, oh, who knows if I could even get in, but it was just like, I can't envision myself here. And I felt like
What
no one was
about it?
listening. It was, I felt like the people that this was my first impression, and we all know first impressions are not always accurate,
Right,
and
yeah.
I'm thankful mine wasn't. But I felt like the people didn't look happy,
Mm,
and I consider myself a pretty happy, joyful person, or at least I try and I desire to be.
mhm,
And it seemed like everyone looked really unhappy.
mm.
But now looking back, I should figure out what day I went because maybe it was like finals week or something. Because it did look just like, wow, no one looks happy to be here. And I don't want to be in a place where no one even seems excited to be.
Yeah, for sure.
I also had this idea that there weren't creative people at Harvard, that Harvard was for people who were only into like math and science. And I was really into math and science, but I was also creative and I also loved humanities. And so I just couldn't envision myself there. I didn't see creative people who seemed joyful. And I think that was kind of the biggest mismatch. Thankfully, several months later, when still people were encouraging me to apply, I decided to visit again because I live in New York City. So New York City to Boston is a very easy commute. And I visited again, and thankfully I actually knew a couple people, one person who went to my school, one person who went to Stage Door, who they were there and they were actually like pursuing theater, whether it was extracurricular or I think, well, Harvard actually just launched their theater degree my
Wow.
freshman year officially, so there, it actually wasn't a degree that you could have undergrad. I didn't major in theater at Harvard, I majored in sociology, but it was a brand new major. And the department's called Theater, Dance, and Media. So it's still not a BFA. It's not a sort of practical program. It is very much a like a theoretical, the art of theater versus you're not going to be taking like a lot of voice lessons or dance classes. They have some acting classes, so I ended up minoring in it, and I took like 5 acting classes with one professor who I love and adore named Remo Araldi, and that kind of became my minor, and that was that.
Wow.
But going back, I visited a second time. I went to a production of Dogfight by a student group, and I was like, whoa, that was a really good show. And I met the people afterwards because I had a friend in the production and he was like, well, come meet the other students. And I was like, wait, these people seem creative and happy. I like those things. You know, those are two things that I hold as like important values in my life. And I started to see myself there. So it was after that second visit that I finally thought to myself, okay, if I could get in, I could see myself being here
Wow.
and I could see myself flourishing here. And, thanks to God, I shockingly got in. And, I was super academic. I worked really hard and I'm thankful for that. But it was also cool to just know that I was in a place with so many exceptional, wonderful people. When people ask me about my time at Harvard, I continue to just go back to the people because Harvard is obviously an amazing school. Duh, everyone knows that. But what really is the case is that most colleges are very similar, you know? There's classes you take, you have exams. I do think like a BFA experience is unique, but most like kind of liberal arts schools, you do have really similar things happening. It's like, well, you take classes, you pick a major, you maybe if you're in a major that requires research, you do some research. You have
Right.
extracurriculars. There's like some social clubs and what, there's similar dynamics. But at Harvard, every single person that I met was just so exceptional, whether that was in music, in a sport, in a science, engineering, writing, like just exceptional people. And it's been really cool now a few years out to like look back and be like, oh my gosh, you did that. And you did that. And yeah, you were an amazing writer. Of course, you're like nationally renowned now. That just makes sense.
Mm.
So that was really special. And also the people goes to the professors because The professors are just incredible. And I remember so I majored in sociology, which is a social science, the study of people and society and identity and institutions. So I've loved having that background, and use it today in my acting career and in my side hustle gigs. Most of them have been based in sociology, and I'm really grateful for that. And it just makes me, I hope, a better person because I have some of that understanding of like what makes people people, on a psychological sense, on a cultural sense, on a societal sense. And I'm personally just really fascinated by that. So I studied sociology, minored in theater, dance, and media. I also love the Spanish language. I got my certificate in Spanish.
You're
Got to
so
study
cool.
in
This is
Spain.
like
Just
incredible. Like, what a
many different
wonderful
things.
life. It's amazing.
Thank you. I feel really grateful to have had like a real kind of breadth of different experiences
Yeah.
already in life. And yeah, I try to not take that for granted that I had the opportunity to go there and to meet wonderful people. And I did a lot of student theater while I was there. I wasn't like that main person because that's when I started working professionally. So what's funny is, of course, I choose to go to a liberal arts school and not, and be very academic for my college experience. And then that freshman fall is when things start picking up in my acting career, and I start actually like booking jobs, and I was like, oh, interesting. Well, now that I'm an enrolled student full time, of course I'll start working as an actor full time.
Are you pursuing those opportunities or they came to you?
Yeah, it was kind of a combination. And so I was still with my agents, and they were sending me out for things. And so I would like come back into New York for the occasional, like a call back here, a call back there. And some of those were for Hamilton, which is really
Oh my
funny
gosh,
to look
wow.
back on because I first auditioned for Hamilton when I was in high school. So it's been a really cool journey. I fell in love with the show when I was 17, and auditioned for the first time at 18 when I was in my senior year of high school. Didn't get a call back, and then later, as every year went by, I would just like kind of make it a little further. And then suddenly it was like, oh, I'm in final callbacks for Peggy and the tour, and like we'll see. And it never went my way while I was in college. And I now look back and I'm like, oh, that was a blessing. One, because I think things work out in the time they need to, but two, because I got to have my degree and got study sociology and meet a bunch of amazing people and experience Harvard and meet my husband. I met Noah in
Oh
college, and
my gosh.
that's when we started dating. And so there's all of these things that needed to work out in
Yeah.
that timing. So it's actually really a gift. And I had the best experience with the people that I was on tour with. And so those people weren't on tour back in 2016,
Yeah.
And it just feels like, God worked it all out. But I had a really great college experience while also not sleeping ever. My main like professional experience during college was actually I worked a lot at the American Repertory Theater, the ART. It's really close to Harvard and is like it is technically affiliated, but I say pseudo affiliated because it's not the case that just being at Harvard, you get to be involved. But what's great is that they have an occasional open casting call with ART. And I was encouraged by a professor to just go to the open casting call. And this was for a production of Violet, the musical, but on a moving bus, directed by Sammy Canold, who's now a dear friend of mine, but she directed How to Dance in Ohio on Broadway this year.
Foster did that, right?
So she did it on Broadway. This
Okay.
was not that production, but yes. And we had the best time. Our Violet was Allie Trim, who is
Oh,
just
amazing.
wonderful. I love her. She was just in Wicked the past few years. But that what's funny, this is the behind the scenes, is that I was really hesitant to audition because one, I wasn't familiar with the show yet. And I also was like, what is immersive theater? Are we going to be on a bus? Like, what does that mean? Is that kind of weird? And this is my freshman fall of college. So I was like, I just got here. I want to just experience life and
Yeah.
go to parties and like be engaged in my classes and meet people. But I went to the open casting call, ended up getting a call back. I actually got dumped right before that callback.
Oh,
So I remember I was just like, like whatever, crying all day, 18 years old, dumped by
Yeah.
some boy. And
Did you
And
use it
then
for your scene or
I don't know, something happened because I guess the callback went really well and Sammy decided to like take a chance on me and I booked the show and that was kind of my first foot in the door with the ART and they were just wonderful to me and I then was able to just keep auditioning for their productions and they got to know me and so I was in several shows with them over my time there and some of them were world premieres, one of them transferred to Lincoln Center back in
Wow.
2019, so I got to be in the show at Lincoln Center. That's how I got my equity card. So I just had a really great time. I got to do a bunch of shows, and I would literally be like, we'd be in tech rehearsal, and I would have my laptop backstage and like be typing out my final papers. And then we would finish our, 10 out of 12 rehearsal day at 10, 11 p.m. and I would go to the library and like pull an all-nighter to finish the papers. So it was it was crazy.
Wow.
And I also had a couple opportunities in New York, so I would like be like, "Hey professors, I'm not going to be in class this week. Like I'm going to New York and doing this workshop and this new musical." And so it was crazy. I ended up also graduating early because I just took extra classes. I don't know, now looking back, I don't know how I survived it.
That's wild.
Like, I really was going above and beyond what my natural capacity would be with the, student workload and professionally. But it was for a time. We now try and have a little more balance, so I don't have accomplished that. But yeah, I'll say that at the beginning of college, I thought, okay, I don't think I want to be a doctor anymore. But I don't know if I loved Broadway. Again, I loved the idea that someone would pay me for this, but I also was like interested in like politics and media and journalism. I was also interested in global health and public health. I had these other kind of like more social science pathways. But the thing is, some doors open and some doors don't. And I remember there was a summer, I think it was either my freshman or sophomore year where I was like, you know what, I'm gonna apply to a bunch of different like internships and see what happens. And I didn't get any of the internships. And then I booked a world premiere musical that summer. And I was like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing this summer. I'm not supposed to be like, in the media research department at NBC. No shade, no teeth. That's awesome. And that would have been really cool. But that did not end up being my path. And I feel like God was like, we're going to close out all these doors. This is not where you're going. You're going in this direction. And I'm really, really grateful because it is the case that also the entertainment industry is a little bit momentum driven. And so I think that things kind of started moving. And then, of course, I graduated early. I was class of 2020. I graduated December 2019 and I was like, oh my gosh, going back to New York, all these shows, I'll be there for audition season. I had like booked this like music video. I booked like a couple concerts. I had a couple little things lined up and I was so excited. And then the pandemic happened and I was like, well, one, I didn't have to deal with school going online. Because of course, naturally, I felt so much FOMO graduating a semester early. I did feel like this is the right decision. Saved a ton of money. I had the credits lined up. So staying that extra semester, I would have been allowed to, but it was just going to be extra. And I wanted to get my career going. I felt ready to be in the world. And I think a lot of that was, I already had my agents from high school. I had grown up here. So even like I had gotten in front of a couple of the casting teams before college. Like I had auditioned for Hamilton. I had auditioned for a few other Broadway shows that I had gotten callbacks for or just been in the mix for, even though I, again, was not that Broadway kid. It was like I was just starting to kind of like dip my toes in. And because I was with Innovative, I was able to. But I graduated into the pandemic and I was like, wow, that's kind of a bummer. And so what's funny is, there are many not funny things about that year, to be clear. And also personally, I feel like for many of us reflecting now on what we did in 2020, there's a little bit of a giggle of like, I can't believe I did that. That's how I spent that year. But at first I was working a little bit with this nonprofit and then someone referred me for a consulting position, which I was not interested in at all. It was like, don't make me. That's not my career path. I don't like it at all. And also, I was unemployed like every other artist, and I was kind of like, I don't know when I'll get to pursue anything creative. And I was with my parents, Noah, who we were just dating at the time, moved into my brother's bedroom. It was like, so we were like living as this family unit. Noah and I had been together for a year, but it was just like a very funny circumstance. And I ended up saying yes to this like interview for a consulting firm, and I ended up getting the job and just being like, I have no idea what it means to be in a corporate work setting. Of course, it was remote as everything was. But I just remember being like, huh, this is not how I thought my career would go.
Yeah.
And I was grateful that, I had other little creative outlets of doing, there were like Zoom musicals or little online concerts and things. And I actually ended up writing a lot that year, which now that things have been busier on the other end, I don't feel like I've been able to write as much, which I really miss. And this is honestly reminding me, but I did consulting for a year, and then summer 2021, I left the consulting job to go back into a creative career full time. And, as Broadway was opening up, as things were shooting again, and I'm thankful that things did start coming my way and there was kind of a momentum. Of course, like the side hustle life is still so real, and I've done kind of a plethora of things from working at a nonprofit, working at a church, working as like a social media strategist, a little marketing, and now what I've done, doing some like content writing, or actually like writing long form like articles. Now what I do that I probably love the most out of all of that is I work as a researcher and a writer with a research firm, and it's mostly focused on like religion and culture, but also kind of like any sort of like cultural issues from like, just anything that you can imagine. And it's been really cool because I get to exercise the sociological research skills that I had left behind, and I love those of getting to do research on different topics and getting to interview people and analyze transcripts. And so I actually do a little bit of this, not podcast form, but hopping online with people to, through that research position, to interview and to learn more about a lot of different things. So that's been really intellectually engaging. And I'm grateful that my side hustle gig is something I actually really like and enjoy, because social science research is fascinating to me. And I feel like just learning more about people, learning more about what people care about, how people think, that has been really intriguing to me. And so yeah, very grateful, and very grateful to like be a working actor, to have a lot of gigs, and to also have auditions. It's kind of funny because sometimes I find myself, auditions can obviously be overwhelming. And also the balancing act that we have to do as artists to just balance our creative career, balance our, there's a lot of unpaid work that goes into auditions. I had 2 auditions today before this, and, you do spend a lot of time learning the material and working on it. Sometimes you want to work with a coach, like a voice coach or an acting coach. It's a lot of time and money and energy that goes into these things. Many of them you send out into the void and you never hear back. Others, maybe you get to like meet someone in person or over Zoom. But it's a lot of work. And honestly, I feel like right now my current grappling is just like, man, how do you like handle the schedule and the lifestyle of not knowing what your life will look like a month from now, and Noah works in sustainability and climate technology, sustainable development, like totally different. But, being in a more corporate space, you do generally know what to expect out of your weeks. You know what to expect out of your months. You can book a vacation a year and a half out because it's kind of like, well, you just put in the time with your boss, and unless you're changing jobs. I don't know I'm still figuring out what that looks like as an actor, because I just don't know. Like, okay, here, I don't know what I'm doing in this month or that month or this week or that week, because I don't know which auditions will pan out, if any. And sometimes you even get something you didn't audition for, and I feel really grateful for those moments too. But things just come in and you just don't know, and you have no idea what's going to work out. So you don't know if you're going to be unemployed and figuring things out, or for me, side hustling and researching and writing, or if I'm going to like be in the rehearsal room or on set or on stage. And it's kind of crazy. But I think back to my high school self who was navigating, is this a lifestyle I can live? And I can say, yes, it is a lifestyle I can do. And I think it forms your character, hopefully in a good way. I think there's possible ways that it can form your character that are really not good, like being extremely volatile and sensitive to rejection. I'm not going to say rejection doesn't hurt. Of course it hurts. No one likes rejection. But I think over the years, I've given myself a lot more grace, and I have just more understanding of the way decisions are made in the industry.
Right.
Now, having friends who are casting directors, producers, directors, etc., I just know a little bit more about the process, and I know that it's literally possible for you to give the best audition ever, like your top-notch audition, and like they just want someone who looks a little different than you look, or who sounds a little bit different. You sounded great, but they want more of this tone, and you have more of this tone or color. And there's not much you can do about that. Of course, we hope we have range, like you can play many different parts and sing many different ways, but also sometimes, and especially, in TV film world, like, it's just like, oh, your hair texture, your height, your body type, like there's so many things. That's also true with Broadway. But I think I have a lot more grace. I was laughing to myself the other day because several years ago, I think I was 18 or 19, when I was a little bit auditioning in college, I had this really big Broadway audition, and I had taken the train in from Boston to come do it, and I messed up the sides, and I thought that I had to learn one song, but it was really a different song. I read the packet wrong, and I realized about 60 seconds before going into the audition room, and obviously I'm like panicking in the halls of Pearl Studios, just like, oh my gosh, I learned the wrong song. I don't know the song that they're asking the girls to sing. I don't know that song. And I went in and I told them, and they were like, well, that's not the song we're doing, which of course, that's true. I made the mistake. So I just sight read it in the room, and I'm thankful my sight reading's better now than it was. It wasn't absolutely disastrous, but it was very close to absolutely disastrous. And I did not know the song at all, and I'm just like singing some notes and saying some words. Obviously no acting is happening. Yeah. And then I didn't run out of the room. I walked out politely. I said, thanks so much. And I walked into the bathroom that thankfully was right next door, and I just like broke down crying. Which, I think most actors have probably had a cry in a Pearl Studios bathroom or a Weekly bathroom or something. But all this to say, I bring that up, one, because it's just like real, like even if you're a working actor, you'll have total flub auditions sometimes, or you'll have like a big voice crack or so, things happen. But now, and that was, how many years ago? 7 years ago, maybe. And I did something recently like that for the first time in 7 years. Oh, no. This time I didn't learn the wrong song, but they had added a song for the final callback, and I missed that memo. I did not see there was another song, so I came in with the initial sides at the final callback. And again, 60 seconds before I go in, I hear the girl before me. I know she's in for the same role, and she is singing a song that I do not know at all. No. And I was like, dang it, I did this again. And again, it's not like this is a weekly occurrence. It's maybe once every 7 years. Yeah. But I walked in and was, totally honest and just, I don't know that song. This is a song I do know. I'm so sorry. I messed that one up. Just being a real person. And they were actually really sweet and came and like plunked it out with me. And then I sang through it on my own. And I will say, sight reading is an important skill. It's an important skill when you book the job, especially like I'm thankful to have done a lot of like new musicals, and you're doing like a 29-hour reading. You got to learn the stuff so quick. But it's also helpful if you ever mess up in an audition and you don't know what's happening and you got the sheet music in front of you. But I bring that up to say, I noticed that I had a very different response, that I walked out with my head held high, and I actually called Noah after and I told him what happened, and I was like, and I feel good about it because I did really well with the song I did know. I did the best I could with the song I didn't know. The sides I felt good about, and that's it. Like, and then we move on. And it was cool to just see that growth of, okay, when this happened when I was 18, 19, it like broke me. And I'm actually really grateful. And this shows the grace that the people on the other side of the table have for us is I didn't get a callback for that appointment, but I believe it was the next year that role opened up again and they called me back in. And I then actually made it to the final callbacks for that role. That time I knew the song. But it's just cool to see how, okay, I'm growing up and my character is being formed where I have like more grit, more resilience, more grace, just like more also like release and surrender to the process of, yeah, there's gonna be times where also your body is your instrument as a singer, also as an actor. So some days your body doesn't feel good as a human. It doesn't even necessarily mean you lost your voice. Of course, there's days I've had bronchitis last fall and like I had a terrible like chest infection while I was in a show and the show didn't have understudies and I don't know how I got through it, like some high belting craziness. But this is also why training is really important because I'm thankful I'm in a place now with my body and my voice. Of course, there's days where you're like, I feel great and it's just easy peasy. There's other days you wake up and you're like, I don't have a full voice. I'm under the weather, but maybe I have to do the show because there's no understudies, or I'm the understudy and I'm the person who's got to go, or you have an audition that can't be rescheduled. This is not, don't push your body beyond what is necessary, but there's times as an artist where it feels somewhat necessary. And I'll even say my final callback for Hamilton was over Zoom and I was positive for both COVID and the flu at the time. Like I was so sick, Julia. It was disgusting. Like I think when I look back at my adult or even just like my life that I can remember, that's the sickest I've ever been during my Hamilton final callback. And it was the time that I booked it, which also goes to show what's meant for you won't miss you. That was the time and place I was supposed to do it. That was the role I was supposed to do at that time. But I was like, singing through all the Schuyler Sisters, just completely, I had just been stuck in the bathroom all morning, like disgusting.
Did they know?
They did. So it's funny, there's kind of this like unspoken rule, or maybe it's spoken, like don't go into an audition and be like, I'm sick. So, because it can turn into a weird dynamic of, well, are you just trying to say you don't know if your voice is going to show up? Right. And there's a little bit of like excuse situation that can come off in a not good way. That said, I do think if you're like extremely sick and it's a matter of are we going to reschedule or not, I think it's worth bringing up in, again, context dependent. But basically that morning I had reached out to my agents and manager and I was like, I'm so sick, guys. But I was like, I still want to do it. I don't know. I feel like I should still do it because it's over Zoom and I really want the job. And they were like, okay, we'll let them know. So, I mean, I love the Hamilton team and the creative team was on there and they were just like, oh my gosh, we heard you're sick. 1, so sorry. Hope you feel better. 2, if you need to like pause at any moment because you're not well and you need to leave, that's okay. You can do that. And they were like, and if we start singing, we know you can sing. You're at the final callback. We know you can sing. But if it's not coming out, like you're trying to sing this stuff and it's not coming out, we know it's not just you can't. We know you can sing. So let's just pause if that happens and we'll reschedule. So they were so generous, which is just, that's their heart and their character. But literally by the grace of God, the notes came out. It was like crazy because I hopped off that Zoom and I was like, hold up. That was the best I've ever sang that stuff. And I was just stuck in the bathroom. Like I had no voice. What's hysterical is right before that I had no voice and right after I had no voice. So I just know it was a miracle. But
it was like also, the adrenaline too.
Truly, like something happened miraculously in that moment that kicked in that I was able to like still sing all the crazy stuff. But I also think it does point to training and why training's so important. And I still train my voice all the time. Like I'm seeing my voice teacher tomorrow. And I do that because the training is important, one, when you have a really intense schedule, like 8 shows a week or 8 shows a week, and then you're also doing a reading during the day or like press or all of these things. We need to be prepared for that, and the vocal load and intensity. But also for the days that you're sick, even if you just have like one audition, when you have the technique, the sickness I've found affects me less. So I've had auditions where I'm like, man, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to sing that at least the way I would want to today. But then I like do a steam and I do a 30-minute warm up and I do all of these different technique things that I've worked on for many years now, and I find that the voice is able to find its way through the technique. So yeah, I don't know. Technique, faith, hard work, being in the right place at the right time, all of these things, but the lifestyle of an actor is crazy.
That's such good advice. Who were your inspirations growing up?
I had many. I absolutely love Patina Miller and Heather Headley and Renee Lee Goldsberry. I think that was like my trifecta of especially like, awesome like Black female leading ladies. Even though I was a literal toddler, I saw Aida on Broadway with the original cast,
Wow.
which is crazy that I even remember it at all. And to be clear, I don't remember all of it, but my mom made a point to bring me and my brother as toddlers because she wanted us to see a Black leading lady on Broadway. And Heather Headley obviously ate that role up. I mean, I still listen to Aida. Also, I'm so excited about this potential revival happening. And I'm like, oh my gosh, can I please be in this? But this time, because in the original Aida, it's this story of like an Egyptian king and love and forbidden affairs. But the Egyptians were played by all white actors who admittedly, despite this inappropriate casting, did really well in their roles. But the story should be played by like a plethora of Black or like African diaspora actors. And so now I'm like, oh my gosh, I would love to play Queen Amneris in that. But all this to say, saw Heather Headley on Broadway as a literal toddler, fell in love. And then Renee Lee Goldsberry, of course. I mean, Rent and Lion King and like all of these things. And Patina Miller, oh my gosh, Pippin, there were so many different projects that I got to just see like glimpses of or YouTube videos when YouTube was like coming out. And I would say those are probably like my three icons. And what I'm really grateful for is I actually like briefly got to work with Patina at the American Repertory Theater back in 2018. I was like so goo goo gaga. It probably
You tell
wildly
her how much she
embarrassing.
inspired you?
Of course.
Yeah.
And I actually had a moment. What's been cool is to like kind of pinpoint over my career and over my life people who keep coming up, or like I met Lin-Manuel Miranda at the stage door of Hamilton at the Public Theater when like right after my 17th birthday. I saw Hamilton at the Public because one of my best friends in high school's mom was Lynn's orthodontist. Yeah, it's so weird. This is stuff that happens when you grow up in New York. And she got tickets to Hamilton and she invited me. And so I was like their plus one. So excited because I loved In the Heights.
Yeah.
Huge In the Heights fan. And I met him at the stage door and took a picture with him, which the stage door at the Public is the lobby. And then obviously years later got to work with him and be in his show. So it was like so sweet to be like, oh my gosh, I was the high school fangirl and now we're colleagues. Like this is crazy. And we did
So
get to have that
cool.
moment.
Yeah.
But I've had that a little bit with Renee. Renee I haven't worked with professionally,
Yes.
but I've gotten to know her a bit over the years, like kind of random different touch points, and to now have this like personal relationship. When before it was like, oh my gosh, you are an icon, an idol, the person that I look up to. I have yet to meet Heather Headley, but oh gosh, I would probably poop my pants if I met her because I just think she's amazing. And it's also very cool. Renee just released an amazing documentary called Satisfied that is about her Hamilton journey and her rise to fame while also becoming a mother. And I'm not yet a mother, and I don't envision that I will be for many years, but I do hope that one day I can be. And it's really cool to see these amazing actors and creatives who have done both parenting and their careers, and that's really inspiring to me for down the line of, wow, like Renee like had toddlers at home during Hamilton. Oh my gosh, she's a superstar, like superhuman superstar. And it's so that's also a cool piece to see. And same with Patina and Heather.
What is the best advice that you've ever received?
Ooh, oh my gosh, that I've ever received. There's so much. I'm really thankful. I feel like I've had a lot of wise people in my life. My parents, Noah is super wise. I have friends, and I have had career mentors. Someone who I love, and I've jokingly called him my career therapist. Mark Tuminelli is the founder and runs a Broadway workshop, which is a theater program I did in high school. And what's cool is I was actually recently brought back as a teacher for one of their programs. And that was so cool. And KO, Karen Olivo, they were also a teacher that day. And I was like, oh my gosh, KO was another person who I looked up to. So then to like do a panel side by side with KO was mind blowing. Anyway, the piece of advice that's coming to mind right now, because I think there has been so much, is someone who is mentoring me in college who was not in the industry, though her husband actually used to be an actor, and so I think she understood the industry, is one, she said you have to have a vision and boundaries around your career. And that really stuck with me because as actors, we're often told, kind of just like bow at the will of whatever comes your way. And I think there's something to being a yes person, being open-minded. There's some things where I've been like, oh, I don't know, but maybe I should just say yes to it, even if it's like not exactly what I wanted because it opens the door to something else. So there's something to that. And also, you're building not only a career, but you're building your life. So you have to make choices that align with the life that you want to lead and also the person that you want to be. So sometimes those choices will not be what is considered like the practical good career thing. Like I have found myself at times turning down jobs, and I'm thankful to be in a position where I could even turn down a job. So I acknowledge like the privilege and blessing that that is. But I've found myself saying no to sometimes auditions, sometimes offers, just because I had something in my gut that said, you're not supposed to be there or something's not aligned. And it was nothing about the project or the people or at all. But it was because for the life that I needed in that season, that could not be a part of it. So there's just this discernment and this like figuring out what kind of life do I want? And that I even mean that really practically of like, do I want to be traveling all the time, or do I mostly want to say yes to projects that keep me in a particular city or New York, you know? And only saying yes to New York, I'm not saying that's not where I am right now, but I'm saying if that was your thing,
Right. Yeah.
only saying yes to New York projects, you're probably going to miss a lot of other amazing job opportunities not in New York. Oh my gosh, there's so many. Again, that's not where I'm at right now, but if you say I want to lead a life where I have like more stability and like a home and I'm not constantly picking up and I have more stable friendships and community, most actors were moving around a lot. So that's like a question that you have to ask yourself, what kind of life and lifestyle do I want to lead? Are you okay with every couple months going to a new location, or every week or couple days going to a new location, like tours? Or different kinds of tours have different kinds of schedules. So there's those questions, but it's also the career that I want to build. Like what kinds of projects am I passionate about? Like what lights my fire artistically? And again, you may not get to only do those projects because sometimes you got to pay the bills or you got to work your way up, and that's okay too. But just and then having the boundaries of these are the kinds of roles or the kinds of things that happen in certain kinds of roles that I'm not okay with.
Yeah.
And standing by those things, knowing that like if you're called to be an actor or creative, the right things will land where they need to, and it's okay for me to say, as an artist or as Ashley, I'm not comfortable doing that or saying that word or whatever the thing is. And again, like those are matters of personal discernment of saying, for my comfort zone, I'm not okay being in a project where this is the main message, or I don't want to do horror films and like have to pretend whatever your thing is. And again, these are not but I'm saying for whatever the things are, your boundaries as an artist aligned with who you are, your character, your values, your identity, and then also the lifestyle that you want to lead. And I'll say that part two that this very wise woman told me that gave me a lot of freedom is she said, everything will happen in seasons in your life, including friendships. And that was very freeing for me, because I think there is a narrative in our culture that like, if you used to be friends with someone or you used to have some sort of relationship and you don't anymore, it's because something blew up or something really terrible happened or you were a bad friend or there was a fight. And the reality is sometimes lives just diverge and that's okay. And she was telling me this as I was graduating college a semester early. So I was feeling a lot of friendship FOMO. I was like, oh my gosh, what if my friends all like have the best time of their lives senior spring? They didn't because it was COVID. But what if they did? And she said, there will be some people who you were close friends with in this season, and nothing will go wrong, but you will just go your separate ways, and you have to be okay with releasing people because it will also create room for new relationships. And I think I was really hesitant about that, or I felt like I have a responsibility. And to be clear, I think you do have a responsibility to certain relationships in your life. And also, I love making new friends and meeting new people. And if I hold on to every person that I've ever met, it's not practical, it's not healthy, it's not psychologically sound because the human brain cannot carry that number of relationships all at one time. So the life comes in seasons, have boundaries and a vision for your career that extends beyond just like, I want to win a Tony Award. Like that's sure that can be part of the vision. That's great. Probably most people feel that way, but having a vision that goes beyond and is more like holistic than that of what do I want my life to look like as an artist? What kinds of projects am I passionate about? What kinds of things do I not want to be involved in? Or I'm okay with doing them now, but 5 years from now, I'm not going to be able to say yes to those kinds of things. We just need those things and also allowing yourself to have seasons. You can have a season where you focus on other things in your life. That's whether it's forced because you didn't get opportunities, or maybe sometimes you choose it because you need to or you want to, and that's okay. Let the seasons happen.
Well, beautifully tying into that, what do you want your legacy to be?
Ooh, legacy. I'm gonna go into what is a legacy.
Right. It's so funny. I'm doing Adam Sandler right now. Do you know this show?
No, wait, tell me more.
Oh, it's just a funny moment. If you don't know the show, then it won't make sense. But there's a moment in the show where Wednesday like shoots an arrow, and we all are like going like this to the arrow, and it takes everything.
Oh, I do know this moment.
Break
Yes.
into the moment. But anyway,
Oh, fun. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. Yeah, I've heard awesome things about Addams Family, but I haven't actually seen it or like I should listen to the soundtrack. Maybe I'll do that tonight. My legacy. I think more than like what kind of career or like what projects I do, I hope my legacy is as a person like who was like radically joyful and radically loving and radically welcoming, someone who made people feel seen and loved and cared for, someone who made people smile, someone who made people feel things, certainly as an artist, but also as a person. So I think that is truly what I want my legacy to be. Not that I got this award or I didn't get this award or I got this role or I didn't, but more the kind of person that I am or hope to become and the impact that that hopefully has on the people I encounter.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. This was really, really lovely.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Julia. Such a pleasure to meet you, such a pleasure to get to chat. Yeah, so good.